Alright guys, the Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with The Terror, Season 1, Episode 4, Review. Alright, so I actually really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really great. I'd like to apologize just for this review being a little late here. My goal is to get these out, Monday night, right after I watch the show. This show is, really, unique in the fact that, there's a lot of stuff that happens in these episodes, and you kind of have to watch it back a couple of times, I think, at least to, totally get the whole story, understand the names, understand, everything that's going on. So it actually does make, making a review right after a little bit harder, and I've had some people point out that, I've, missed some things or got something wrong, and, totally, I really want, people to keep doing that because, that helps all of us out, right? All of us, so especially me, right? So I really, acknowledge that, of course, and maybe, working these, reviews in a little bit later, then maybe give me a chance to, learn a little bit more and, and get, everything right, or at least, most things. So anyways, yeah, I thought this episode, was very good. Not as good as last episode. Last episode, we had a very surprising death, right, of Sir John. I thought he was going to be the main character going forward, and just like that, he's dead within like 30 seconds. So that was a crazy episode last week, and this week, a lot of positives, right? A lot of positives. I would compare this more a little bit to episode 2 in the fact that there was some action. Don't get me wrong, but there wasn't, it wasn't just action packed. Like, there was, some down moments here, in terms of Francis and the crew boys and stuff like that just really, wasn't really entertaining, but they kind of just had to fill up the, the time of the episode. And this one was a little bit longer as well. I think it was like 47 minutes, 48 minutes, rather than like 42, I think is the regular time, 42, 45. So yeah, it was a couple minutes later, a couple minutes longer, and yeah, I thought it worked well. So anyways, we'll go over my recap here first, and then of course get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts. I'd also just like to thank everyone for watching these terror reviews. I've gotten so much support on them. The likes, the comments, the shares, the views, and everything. So I really, really appreciate it, and even subscribers as a result of that. So really, really appreciate it. This series, I'm really, really liking it. I'm not, I'm not gonna stop posting these reviews. I'm really into this, and hopefully, you keep coming back every week and tune into the reviews. So anyways, let's get into this. So we see November 1847, 5 months later. So we're 5 months after the death of Sir John, essentially, right? So we see Sir John's wife, and her name is Lady Jane in this. So Lady Jane and Francis's wannabe wife, I would say, I guess. Her name's Sophia, I think. And so, yeah, I think Francis, didn't get her, to be his wife, but he wanted her to be. Anyways, so they're talking about the expedition, right? And their husbands, right? And then the two women meet with a board of men. They walk into this big conference room or whatever. So basically, the whole point of it is Lady Jane tells them that she basically is going, right, because she's kind of worried about her husband right now, right? Because they've been gone for a while. She hasn't really heard anything. So she goes in, and they tell them that nobody has seen either ship, but I don't even know how you can say this in the same breath. Like, no one has seen either ship. They're basically lost. But there's no reason to be alarmed, right? Like, there's no reason to be alarmed. And then the one guy says, they have complete confidence in your husband's command. So it's like, one hand you're saying, we haven't seen them, they're lost, like, we don't know where they are, and then on the other hand, you're saying, no need to be alarmed, though, right? They're kind of, obviously, you're not going to tell, Sir John's wife here, Lady Jane, that, her husband's lost, and, he's going to be gone, right? So, of course, you don't say that, but, it did seem a little bit, flip-floppy here, but then we see Sir John's wife object, right? She objects, and reveals that her husband wasn't even their first, second, or third pick to lead the expedition, which is interesting, right? And we all know that Francis actually has more experience than Sir John, and we find this out a little bit later in the episode when he's talking to Fitz James. So, yeah, so there's that dynamic as well, right? Maybe Sir John, it wasn't their first pick, so maybe they don't have a lot of confidence, right? Maybe they're, lying. So then she demands that they do something more to help the crew, right? She's really worried. She wants them to do more, maybe send in another search team or something. And she's really angry and upset at the men at this point. She kind of, raises her voice and, kind of goes off on them. So then the men still decline to do what she asks. And they're not really willing to do anything to, more to help. And she thinks that her husband needs her help. She tells Sophia then afterwards, she says, I have a feeling that they need our help. Well, your husband did you need your help months ago before he died, right? So obviously she doesn't know that, yeah, he died already. But I'm pretty sure, at least if I'm getting this right, that he's already dead at the time that they're having this meeting. So, kind of ironic there. The audience, of course, knows that, but she doesn't know that yet. And she probably won't know that for a while. So, very interesting scene there to start off the episode. Then we see Francis. He's sitting below deck there, and all of a sudden, the monster attacks. So, and I had a comment, someone commented that Toonbach is what I guess is what the monster is called, or at least that was in the book it was called. So yeah, I had to search that up. I wasn't sure what that exactly meant, but anyways, if you're familiar with the book or the story, then you would know that. But I'm just gonna call it the monster, just easier to keep track of. But anyway, so the monster attacks then, and he actually injures one of the men on the deck. And then a man comes and tells Francis that it took another man and just left. Right? Like, it took the man with them, and then, they never saw this guy again. So, another attack, right? And you see that, they're really, trying to prevent this. They have, these tents set up on the ships and everything, so they're really, concerned about this, right? Of course, after Sir John dies, they're the leader of the expedition. They're going to take precautions, right, to hopefully prevent more, death from occurring. But anyway, so Francis demands his man, the one man, to go to the armory and to go after it, right? So they're going to get a team together to go after this monster, right? And the one guy says, maybe he wants us to follow it, sir. Maybe this is a trap. And he ends up being right. I mean, this guy is totally right. Francis doesn't quite see that yet. And yeah, so then the teams of two, right? Teams of two go out off the ship to search for the monster. And, mainly the body, or at least, or the person, the man who has gone missing, right? So Francis and the boy, he meets, this boy asks him if he can come along. So Francis says yes, brings him along. They are just walking out, just like the other teams. But suddenly they come across the body of the man that was taken. But it turns out it was, a fake out, right? It wasn't actually the body. It was just a skin on the ground or something like that, right? Just like fur on the ground or something that looked like a body. So Francis actually leaves the boy to go look at it, right? And of course, it's totally a trap. So then Francis comes back to see the boy taken away, and then there's, just blood on the snow, and you hear the boy scream and stuff. So the monster outsmarted them here, right? Definitely outsmarted them, and, he's able to set these traps. That's pretty crazy to think about, that, this animal's that smart and that, he can think of this stuff. So, yeah, crazy stuff there. And then we see, they come back, and Francis obviously feels really bad about this. And then we see the crew witnesses the last sunset of the year, right? The sun's going down, and the one guy says that's the last one of the year. So, not looking good, right? And the one guy says it feels like a bad omen, right? That the last sunset is coming, and we're being, hunted by this monster, and all this stuff's going on. It just feels like a bad omen, and I would say he's right? That is probably symbolizing, bad things to come, or yeah, even worse things to come, even though they've already experienced some pretty bad things. So, then we get a scene with Francis talking to Fitz James. This was an interesting scene. I'm waiting for more of this, the dynamic between these two characters going forward, now that Sir John is dead, obviously. And Francis seems very doubtful about their future. Before this, before Sir John died, he was kind of the optimistic one, I would say. He was more like the realistic one, right? Sir John just wanted to find the passage, for his own kind of personal gain. And Francis was kind of like, the realistic guy who was sensical and all that stuff. But now he's really just, taking it another notch and saying, like, it's not possible, right? So he's very doubtful right now. And he started drinking heavily as well. We see that, throughout the episode. And he even says, you realize the passage is beyond us now? He says that to Fitzjames. And, like, that's pretty crazy. I mean, Francis is not even going for the passage anymore. He's just trying to get out alive. Is pretty much what's conveyed in this scene, right? Francis has given up on this passage, and he just wants to live. He just wants to get the crew, back to safety and whatever. So, and I totally get that. Like, it's not going well and all that stuff. But Fitzjames questions Francis a little bit here because, he doesn't believe that. He still wants to find the passage, of course. And he even questions Francis and says, why are you even here if you don't want to find the passage anymore? And Francis says he was ordered on the expedition to help Sir John and keep him safe. So that's pretty interesting, right? Again, like I said before, we know that he has a little bit more experience, that, maybe he actually should have been the commander of the expedition, but instead Sir John got the role. But anyways, that was interesting there. And then Francis, leaves his room, and he says, you're going to need all the pity you have for what's coming. So, crazy stuff. Things are not looking good here, right? And this dynamic between Fitzjames and Francis is not looking good either, right? They're really not, getting along. And obviously we already know that they do not like each other. So now being thrown into this, situation where they kind of have to work together now, because I would assume that Fitzjames is now the commander of the Terror, right? And yeah, so going to be very interesting going forward there. So then we see Mr. Hickey, and he had a big part in this episode. Mr. Hickey's then assigned watch duty, and then suddenly he's walking up and down the ship, and he finds a man leaning against the side of the ship, right? So he, pushes him over and finds him cut in half, right? His legs and upper torso are just separated, like that. It's crazy. He just pushes the guy a little bit, and he falls down, and he's in half. So really gruesome sight here. He looks out and catches a glimpse of the monster. Damn, like, that was probably the coolest part of the episode this week, when he actually, we actually saw at least the outline of it, right? We saw the outline of that monster. Kind of looked like a polar bear a little bit, right? And yeah, so that was a really, really cool moment there where he actually caught a glimpse of it, and he kind of looked into its eyes, right? And so the monster knows, that he knows that it was him. So, the monster's trying to, show his presence, right? And kind of, show off or whatever, that he cut this guy in half. And I assume that this is the guy that was missing before, right? This is the guy, that they were looking for, and now he was returned, but he's cut in half, and he's dead. So, anyways, so then Hickey asked one of the men where the Eskimo girls' camp is. So, that's what he said, because he says, or he thinks that she has to do with this monster, right? He thinks that she's to blame, and he says, tell me where you found it, right? Lead me to her, and I'll go get her, pretty much, right? So yeah, very interesting there. And Hickey, like I said, has a little bit of a bigger role this episode, and does some things. So, anyways, so then the doctor, we see a little bit after that, reveals the dismembered body to Francis and Fitzjames, tells them that it was a claw that sliced through the body, right? None, no knife, no, sword, no blade could have done this. And Fitzjames is still skeptical. I'm not sure how at this point, how you could still be skeptical of this. But anyways, so Fitzjames is skeptical, but the doctor says it had more strength than a man could ever muster. So, right, so we know that it's not a man. It's not, just a sword being used. It is a claw, and it is a monster. And then the one man says, we found the creature's tracks circling Terror. So, right, pretty crazy here. It is definitely not a man, right? And Fitzjames is kind of realizing this, and this quote was in some of the trailers as well. But he says, not a man, not a bear, then what? Right? And Fitzjames really, just really confused at this point. Like, he doesn't know what to think. It's not a man, it's not a bear, then what? Right? And they, obviously, they haven't heard of this, spiritual, monster or whatever, right? So definitely, mysterious to them, mysterious to us as well. So Fitz James thinks they should question the Eskimo girl, Lady Silence, to see what she knows about the creature, right? And he says that she has been camping near them for months, and he thinks that she has a strong involvement with what's going on, right? He thinks that she's guilty of this. So Francis agrees, then locks himself in his room. So this was a little bit of a interesting scene there, right? He doesn't really know what to do, right, or how to get out of this situation, right? So he agrees to question Lady Silence, but he's really troubled at this point, and we kind of see that with him locking himself in his room, right? He needs a moment. So he then remembers a moment with Sophia, right? And I really, really like this line from Sophia when she says, "I will never understand this mania for the passage. To go thousands of miles to a place that wants you dead." So I just felt like that was a really good line. I wanted to include that here. Crazy stuff, right? And it's so true, right? I mean, it's literally a place that wants you dead. You're meant to die if you go there. And so she doesn't understand the whole thing about the passage. Obviously, Francis is very optimistic at this point. He thinks that he is going to be given command of the expedition. Of course, we know that he wasn't. But anyways, yeah. So, and it has turned into a place that wants them dead for sure. So I really felt like that line was good. And the flashbacks were very strong in this episode as well. So then suddenly chaos starts breaking out in the ship. Basically, a bunch of the men are kind of crowding Lady Silence and kind of want to get a piece of her, or at least, talk to her, question her. So Francis gets his gun, right? He's not playing around anymore. And we find out that Hickey, Mr. Hickey, was the one who brought back Lady Silence to question her, right? He wanted, before he asked the guy, where you found her or whatever. So him and the other men went and got her and brought her back. And basically the crew members want to harm her, and they blame her for what is happening, right? They basically all blame her, and they think that she has some sort of a role at least in what's happening to them. Some even think that she's controlling the monster, right? That, she is telling them what to do. So Francis takes control of the situation, by, shooting his gun up in the sky there. And he says, there will be no violence towards this woman. So Francis is really taking the moral approach here. He really cares about Lady Silence and actually respects her. He's one of the only ones, I made this point last week, but he's one of the only ones who respects these, they call them Eskimos in the show, but, native people. He's one of the only ones who respects them in the show, I would say. I mean, Sir John definitely did not, or at least have the same level of respect for them as they do their fellow, crew members, right? So obviously that's just not present, but for Francis, I would say it is, or at least closer than everybody else. So anyways, Francis taking on his leadership role here, laying down the law per se, and then the men take Lady Silence to Erebus so that they can question her there. So then we see Hickey. So they call Hickey in to tell his side of the story pretty much of why he brought her back. So Mr. Hickey tells Francis about the scene when they picked her up, right? Tells them what happened, and he says the monster was there at her camp, right? And then he describes it as 3 times the height of any bear they have seen, with a different set to its head and its eyes. So we know that we're not dealing with a bear here, right? Not a man, not a bear, then what? I love that quote. I feel like that's awesome. I think that's going to definitely come back, right? But anyways, so we're not dealing with a bear, right? And he even says, I thought there was 2 ice homes or 2 snow homes, but it was actually just the monster beside her home, like igloo, but they didn't call it that back then. But yeah, like 2 igloos, right? Like the monster's that big. So pretty crazy stuff here. And then Hickey said it looked like she was performing a spell on the monster, that she was controlling it. So obviously we know Hickey believes that she's controlling this monster and telling him what to do. Then the monster was spooked and ran off, right? Hickey says, I made eye contact with it and then it ran off. So, which seems a little bit weird because, like, after attacking all these men and cutting them in half and killing Sir John and all this, the monster's just going to run off when a few of the guys are there looking at it. Like, I don't know, that part seemed a little bit off. But anyways, Hickey is defending his actions, right, of picking her up right away. He says the monster looked right at him and didn't rush him, right? But instead ran away. So yeah, again, very interesting there, right? And he says it isn't an animal we battle, right? That's what Hickey says. So obviously he knows that it's more than just a bear, right? It's definitely a creature. It's a monster, right? It's something more. So Francis punishes the men. He doesn't really, he doesn't have any of it really. He thinks, what Hickey did was wrong, right? He said wait until the morning, and Hickey, really just disobeyed his orders, right? Directly violated his orders. So then we see that Hickey, still fights against Francis. He's still fighting. He says that she is responsible for the deaths of the men, and he says you should be prosecuting her, not us. I just saved your life. So that's pretty harsh to say. Honestly, I agree with Hickey in this situation. I don't know about saving his life, but I mean, I don't really think he deserved the punishment he got here. But Francis, he's taking on that leadership role, right? So I think his issue though here is he has to know how hard to push on things, right? And this one, I think he pushes a little bit too hard. But anyways, Francis sentences Hickey to punishment for his words against him, right? For the stuff he said. He will be given 30 lashes. So that's, very interesting there. And then we see that scene play out. I thought it was a little bit prolonged. I don't think we needed to see all of the lashes. But, they really, resonated that and really, captured that scene of how it would feel, right? We even saw Hickey afterwards, having trouble sitting and all that stuff. So he was in a lot of pain, and obviously I think he's learned from this, but I still think it seems like undeserved punishment for what he did, right? I don't think what he did was that bad. I think this is kind of showing that Francis is a little bit out of touch with, how to be a proper leader. So, I don't know, that's my opinion though, right? Obviously, maybe there's something different, maybe that isn't what they were trying to say, but that's what I got out of it for sure. So, we see the very last scene here. Mr. Hickey, so he was focused on a little bit in this episode. I just want to touch on this. I really liked this part. I think he's going to have a bigger character going forward. Obviously now with Sir John gone, you really only have Fitz James and Francis as the kind of the main two now. So is Hickey going to become, a third man? Maybe he's going to learn after this, lashing or whatever, the punishment, and maybe he's going to be, one of Francis's men. Who knows, right? But we'll have to see, where he goes moving forward. So then we see, it's the last scene here. Good Sir brings the Eskimo girl, or Lady Silence, some food and water. So, I don't know, he was told to do this, but this was kind of a strange scene, honestly. Kind of funny in a sense, too, because she doesn't like the food at all. She starts spitting it out and stuff, so that was pretty funny. He even gives her some chocolate. I thought that was kind of funny, and she hated that. And so Good Sir's talking to her the whole time. He's talking to the woman and trying to help her a little bit. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, she doesn't probably understand a word he is saying right now, right? She has no idea what he's saying. And he does say, none of it England, none of it England, right? Trying to kind of, connect with her and communicate, but honestly, I don't think it's working. I don't think she understands a word that he's saying. But anyways, this was kind of an interesting scene. And then he also tells her how important the Northwest Passage is to the English, right? I thought this was interesting here, saying, how important it is that they're risking their lives here so that they can finally find a way, for their economy with China and India and all this stuff. So that was interesting, but that was just about it. And then, he says, "Good Sir," and then the episode ends. So I did get a comment last week saying someone predicted that Good Sir is going to have somewhat of a an interesting role. There might be kind of a twist around his character. I don't think they read the book, so it's nothing spoilers. It's just their prediction, and I totally agree. I think sums up here with Good Sir, and I think we're going to see something that, we aren't expecting with Good Sir. I think he's going to turn into a different type of character for us. But anyways, we'll have to see what happens. But that was, kind of an interesting scene at the end there. So, anyways, that'll just about do it for the recap. Alright, so in terms of our rating for this one, I'm going to give it a 4.4 out of 5. Like I said, I liked it better than Episode 2, right? Episode 2 is probably the worst one so far out of the 4. But still, by worse, I mean, it is still a pretty good episode, especially that bear hunt thing. That was a pretty good episode. But that was pretty much the only action that we saw. So there was a lot of character building and a lot of development. So I appreciate that as well. Don't get me wrong. But anyways, the horror aspect continued to be very apparent right in this episode. Hitting us home, right? I mean, a guy's slashed in half. The young boy is taken and bloodied all over the snow. So crazy stuff, right? Really crazy stuff, and a lot of focus on this monster, right? A lot in this episode. So obviously it's going to be a focal point now of the show. That's kind of the main focus right now is this monster. But yeah, so a lot of focus on it, and it really showing the crew kind of reacting to this, figuring out what it is to begin with, and eventually maybe how to fight it, how to finally, beat it, right? How to beat it and survive. But if I had to give you my honest prediction, I don't think that they are going to beat it, right? I think that's how they're going to meet their demise here. But they're very, very interesting, right? With having something like this, like a supernatural creature, pretty much. That's so far at least pretty invincible, right? He's pretty hard to mess with, so very interesting there, and I really like the focus on him too, like the lines with not a man, not a bear, then what, stuff like that. I really like that. And then Hickey, it isn't an animal we battle, so they're kind of trying to finally coming to terms that this isn't a bear, like it's something more, right? It's a bigger thing, right? And then Hickey also becoming a bigger character, right? I mentioned this a lot, but really, kind of spotlighting him in this episode. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see where he goes moving forward. If he ends up befriending Francis here, maybe if he, sides with Fitz James, maybe. So it'll be very interesting, but we'll have to see what happens with him. And the flashbacks were really good in this episode as well. I did say this earlier, but yeah, I really liked the flashback at the very beginning. Explained some things for sure. Or I guess that wasn't even a flashback. That was actually like current times, just, in England, not, in the Arctic. And then there was a couple flashbacks there with Francis. So yeah, really, really positive to always see flashbacks, helping build the story here a little bit. And yeah, so I really liked the flashbacks last week too. Sorry, so yeah, really great job there with those as well. So yeah, 4.4 out of 5. I really like in this series, I will tell you that. I mean, this is really, really awesome. I really look forward to this every Monday night. It's really awesome. So yeah, really, really glad that that AMC picked this up, and is running with it. They're really, putting a lot of money, a lot of work into this, a lot of advertising too. I'll tell you that on AMC. They're putting a lot of work into this. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's going to be an awesome rest of the season. Favorite character for this one is going to be James Fitz James, which I still think is pretty funny that it's, the last name is basically the same as the first name. Anyways, so he's played by Tobias Menzies. Tobias Menzies has been in Outlander and Game of Thrones, so two pretty big shows on the air right now. So for him to, be a part of this cast is a pretty big deal. So him and Jared Harris obviously will be leading it now. And I had a commenter say it's apparently Kieran Sins. So I was pronouncing it wrong. Big surprise there. But anyway, Kieran Sins it is, and obviously he's gone now. So it'll just be Jared Harris and Tobias Menzies leading it. But the Fitz James character is very interesting, right? We'll have to see where that goes. The dynamic between him and Francis, going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see that play out a little bit more. Them, kind of butt heads. Maybe they actually come together over this common goal. We'll have to see, right? We'll have to see. But Fitz James is still very affected by the death of Sir John. I think we see that in this episode, and even maybe affects his judgment at this point. So that was a really big loss for him. Francis not quite feeling the same way, but I'm sure he obviously feels that as well. But yeah, Tobias Menzies doing a great job. He's really great. Obviously he's a great actor if he's in shows like Outlander and Game of Thrones. So yeah, really great stuff there for this episode. But yeah, that'll just about do for the review. Thank you so much for watching this week for the Terror Season 1, Episode 4. Really like to thank you guys for the recent support. I said this at the beginning. The views, the shares, the likes, the subscribers, just everything, the comments, like just a lot of stuff, happening in the last 2 weeks here with the Terror reviews and the, the Trust, Walking Dead, just everything, in general, and The Crossing as well. That one, did pretty well. So yeah, I just really would like to thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. And let's keep going, right? Let's keep this going, and let's get more people to the channel, and really, get this discussion going about some of your favorite shows. So yeah, please keep coming back every week for reviews of The Terror. I will be here every Tuesday. Let's just say that we'll go for Tuesdays. That I'll be making these reviews. So anyways, guys, again, thank you so much for watching this one, and I will see you next week for episode 5 of The Terror.